What is going on, everybody? Today we've got NFL Mock Draft 6.0, and this one should be a fun one. We've got 3 rounds with trades, and you got to keep in mind I'm trying to predict the picks. It's not necessarily what I would do. Draft season is here. We are 9 days away from the first round of the NFL Draft, and there's going to be a lot of content here on this channel over the next week and a half. I'm going to have my 7-round mock draft that I do every year. I'm going to reveal my player rankings. I'm going to do a what I would do mock draft. The day of the draft, I always like to have one more mock up to try to predict how the first round is going to go. And there might even be some other stuff as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun here over the next week and a half as we get ready for the NFL Draft, especially with all the rumors that are really starting to come out now. We're going to try to dissect those, figure out which ones are facts and which ones are smoke. So without further ado, let's not waste any time and get this show on the road. Over the last month or so, it's been kind of a foregone conclusion that C.J. Stroud is going to be the #1 pick. However, over the last week or so, that has really shifted to Bryce Young. And when I initially saw those rumors, I didn't really buy them. I thought Carolina was trying to get Houston to try to move up to the #1 pick because I think it's pretty clear that Bryce Young is Houston's guy. But I'm starting to think he's Carolina's guy too. If you look at all the betting markets, Bryce Young is the heavy favorite to be the selection. So I think right now Bryce Young is the #1 pick. I think at this point it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. I really want to talk about this Texans pick at 2 because this is now very interesting. We've heard a lot of different things over the past couple of days. Ian Rappaport says the Texans are going to pick a quarterback. Lance Zierlein, who's very plugged into the Texans organization, says they're not going to draft a quarterback. There's some reports that say the Texans are trying to move out of this pick. There's some reports that say they really like Will Levis. So who the hell knows what's going to happen? Most of those rumors have come out within the last 24 to 48 hours. So I think over these next few days, maybe we'll get more clarity on what is true and what is not. If I were to guess, however, I think it would make the most sense for Houston to look at Will Anderson here, the pass rusher out of Alabama. Quarterback obviously makes a lot of sense. And if they pick C.J. Stroud here, I really wouldn't see a problem with it. I think it's very possible that they pick Will Levis as well. If they really like Stroud or Levis, that's who's going to be the pick at 2. I think Houston does like Will Levis. I think it makes sense. And I think here maybe the Texans are going to try to find a path to still land Will Levis while also drafting a big-time pass rusher with Will Anderson for your new head coach, DeMeco Ryans, to try to build around. So I'm not sure if it's going to work for the Texans, but in this mock draft, hint, hint, it will. With the 3rd pick, we've got a trade. Now, I've seen some reports recently that this pick likely will not be moved, and there's a real shot that we only have 1 quarterback off the board within the first 3 picks. I don't buy it. I think it's smoke. I think that must be from somebody who's trying to scare off the Colts to moving up to this selection. Somebody wants to move up to 2 or 3 and draft a quarterback, in my opinion. The Colts recognize this, and their thought process is no. We're not going to risk it. We're going to come up and get our guy. So the Cardinals will get picks 4, 79, and a future 4th rounder next year. Maybe that's not enough, but I think that's a fair price. If the Cardinals don't find another deal they like, they can stay in the top 4. They're going to add another top 100 pick this year, while the Colts are going to go up and get C.J. Stroud, the quarterback out of Ohio State. Go up and get your guy. You don't have to give up too much in order to do it. Again, maybe the Colts would have to give up more. Maybe that future 4th is more like a 2nd or a 3rd. But I think this is a fine move for the Colts. And as for the Cardinals at 4, I know this is a little bit of a surprising pick, but I have them going with Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback out of Oregon. I could really see him going in the top 5. It kind of is similar to Denzel Ward a few years ago. Everybody was convinced that someone like Bradley Chubb was going to go ahead of Denzel Ward. This year, Bradley Chubb, I guess, is Tyree Wilson. And while Bradley Chubb in real life was better than Denzel Ward last year, Ward has had a better career, and that pick has really worked out for Cleveland, and I could see a similar result happening here. Christian Gonzalez is a great cornerback prospect, high production at Oregon, but good ball skills, good size and length, and he tested very well at the Combine. The Cardinals need cornerback really bad, and we saw in Jonathan Gannon's defense last year how important it is to have 2 great corners on the outside with Darius Slay and James Bradbury. Right now, the Cardinals have none. So they're going to pick Christian Gonzalez. I know it feels a little bit early, but I don't think it's that big of a reach if you really think about it. The Seattle Seahawks at 5 select Jalen Carter out of Georgia. There's a number of spots that Carter could go to, but I really don't see him falling out of the top 10, and I think it would make a lot of sense for Seattle to pick him here. This is a team who needs some help on the defensive line. They've got an established culture, unlike, say, Arizona, with a new head coach and a new GM and an entirely new group of guys there. I don't think it would be a smart pick for the Cardinals to pick Jalen Carter, because I think that culture may not be best suited for him, whereas Seattle, you've got a bunch of leaders who are going to hold him accountable. Pete Carroll's a great head coach, another guy who has experience with players with questionable character, and Carroll and Schneider and the Seahawks are not afraid to take guys like that, so I think this pick would make a lot of sense for them. The Lions at 6 go with Devin Witherspoon, the corner out of Illinois. As of yesterday, Devin Witherspoon was plus 110 to be the pick, so it seems like Vegas right now is pretty confident that this is going to happen. There's a bunch of different scenarios that the Lions could go with. Obviously, any of those defensive players who have already been picked would be in play if they're on the board. Tyree Wilson is certainly in play as well, and I wouldn't rule out a quarterback here. As a Lions fan, I would pick Anthony Richardson here. I think he's the type of guy who you could develop and really become the class of the NFC if he can reach his ceiling. However, I'm not opposed to really just focusing on the defense, which in terms of most team rankings last year was not good. The defense was not horrible towards the second half of the year. I feel like that's a common misconception. People don't realize that the Lions' defense was a lot better down the stretch, and obviously they've drastically improved it in free agency, particularly the secondary. Adding guys like Emmanuel Mosley, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Cameron Sutton, but they could use another corner in the room. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's a free agent after next year. So is Emmanuel Mosley. So is Jerry Jacobs. So at the cornerback position, Cam Sutton is the only key guy who is under contract after next season. Devin Witherspoon's going to be able to play right away, but he's also going to fill what will likely be a future need for Detroit. And I think with his play style, he will really fit the Dan Campbell culture. At pick 7, we've got another trade. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are moving up with the Las Vegas Raiders, and they are giving up a lot. The Buccaneers will be trading picks 19, 50, 175, and a future first-rounder next year to move up to 7 and draft Anthony Richardson. So the Raiders are now no longer in the top half of the first round, but they're getting a big collection of picks back, including another top 50 pick this year and a first-rounder next year, which could end up being a pretty high pick. I don't think it's going to be as high as people think, because the NFC South is bad. And if Anthony Richardson here ends up being a good player as a rookie, which I think is a little bit more likely than people think with his rushing ability, there's no reason to think the Buccaneers can't win this division. I mean, there are no great teams in the NFC South. I think all 4 teams are pretty much even in terms of talent. So I see there a real possibility of the Bucs winning some games next year if Anthony Richardson's not horrible as a passer and good enough on the ground. If he has a similar impact that, say, Justin Fields had with the Bears, the Buccaneers could win this division, and even if not, I don't think their pick is going to be like that high. I don't think it's going to be in the top 10. So it's not like this first rounder next year is going to be the second overall pick or something. I don't think that's the case. While for the Raiders, you're still getting a bunch of picks. So I think it works out for them, and for the Bucs, you're going up, you're getting your quarterback. Atlanta at 8. They go with Tyree Wilson, who slips to them here. There's a number of spots Wilson could have gone here. He could have been the pick at 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 had the Raiders stayed, but he ends up falling to Atlanta's laps at 8. I've seen a couple different names linked with the Falcons recently, including Nolan Smith from Georgia and Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas. Both of those guys are definitely in play here, but with Tyree Wilson on the board, it might be a little bit too hard for the Falcons to pass him up. With the 9th pick, we've got the Chicago Bears going on the offensive line with Paris Johnson out of Ohio State. I think the Bears would certainly love to have a guy like Jalen Carter or Tyree Wilson fall here, and it is certainly possible. In this mock draft, it doesn't happen, so they're going to get some protection for Justin Fields. Right now, as of yesterday, Paris Johnson and Peter Skoronski are pretty much even at around plus 120 to be the top offensive lineman picked. Darnell Wright and Broderick Jones, I think, are in the discussion as well, but for now, I have them going with Johnson, a guy who's played a bunch of different positions and really can slide in at guard or tackle right away. He has said he's willing to play guard if needed, although if you look at the Bears' offensive line, he's probably going to play tackle, and I think he can be a big addition to that team. With the 10th pick, we've got another trade. I said the Texans are going to try to figure out how to get a blue-chip defensive player in Will Anderson and Will Levis, who they supposedly like at quarterback, and they're going to make it work. Jumping the Tennessee Titans, moving up from 12 to 10. The Texans get picks 10 and 248, while the Eagles get 12, 104, and 188. I could have had the Texans give up a third here, but the Eagles lack day 3 picks, so I think they'd rather 2 day 3 selections, one of which being the top pick of the 4th round, as opposed to 1 third-rounder. So I think this is a good move for the Eagles. They're getting the same guy I would have picked for them at 10, while Houston jumps Tennessee, who supposedly wants a quarterback potentially, and the Texans are going to pick Will Levis. Again, if they absolutely love Will Levis, he could very well be the pick at 2, but I think the Texans are going to be really happy with how this scenario ultimately plays out. So Tennessee does not get Will Levis. He certainly would have been in play here at 11, but I have them going with Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle out of Tennessee. Wherever you think Darnell Wright is going to go, I'm going to tell you right now he's going to go higher than that. I think Darnell Wright will be a top half of the first round selection. I think he was either plus 700 or plus 800 to be the top offensive lineman off the board. I really like that value. I think there is a world where Darnell Wright is the first tackle selected. I wasn't quite bold enough to do it here, but I really thought about it at 9. I think Darnell Wright's coming off a great year, another guy who could play tackle or guard for the Titans with their need at tackle. It's probably going to be there, and they're going to keep him in state. I think he's a really strong prospect, and again, I think he's going to go earlier than people think. The Philadelphia Eagles at 12 select Lucas Van Ness, the edge rusher out of Iowa. In my last mock, I had them pick Bijan Robinson, and I think that's really possible. I know it's not a Howie Roseman thing to pick a running back in the first round. Howie Roseman's a guy who really invests in positions that have strong positional value. That's why the Eagles have been really good over the past couple of years. That's why they made it to the Super Bowl, because they've invested in the offensive and defensive lines with early selections rather than positions like safety, linebacker, and running back, which historically Howie Roseman hasn't really valued. I think Bijan Robinson can be an exception to the rule with how good he is. However, I think Lucas Van Ness does make a lot of sense for the Eagles. He's a little bit raw, but Philadelphia is a team who's not afraid to draft for the future. Maybe Van Ness doesn't make an early impact in year 1, but he's a guy who can have a long-term role on the defensive line, and the Eagles have a good track record of developing players like him. Peter Skoronski, offensive tackle out of Northwestern, to the New York Jets at 13. This was a pretty easy selection. They need help on the offensive line, and Skoronski's really good. Whether you play him at tackle or guard, he's going to be a stud. At pick 14, we've got a trade. There are a bunch of players I like for New England. They could go with any of the wide receivers. They could go with one of the top corners on the board, Joey Porter or Deonte Banks. They could look on the offensive line with Broderick Jones and Anton Harrison. New England has so many options to where they might as well move down, get some additional assets, and still get one of the guys they like. So Seattle will be moving up to 14. The Seahawks will acquire picks 14 and 107. The Patriots will get picks 20 and 52. Keep in mind, Seattle has an earlier second rounder thanks to the Russell Wilson trade, and they're moving up for the top wide receiver in this class, Jackson Smith-Njigba out of Ohio State. Similar to Philadelphia, Seattle's another team who is not afraid to draft for the future, and they could have a long-term need at wide receiver once Tyler Lockett starts to get older. Even now, they could use another guy in the slot. Obviously, Lockett can play in the slot. He can also play outside. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba can play on the outside, but he is obviously a slot specialty, and I think he'd be a really fun addition to this Seattle offense. Nolan Smith, the edge rusher out of Georgia, goes to the Packers at 15. Green Bay, I think, could look to replenish the pass rush. Nolan Smith is a high upside, high character kid. I don't think he goes much later than this. I think his stock is continuously rising here over these next couple of weeks. And again, I said he could be in play for Atlanta at 8. So I would really say anywhere between 8 and 15 is probably Nolan Smith's range. He's another guy, similar with Darnell Wright. Wherever you think he's going to go, it's probably going to be higher. And then with the 16th pick, the Washington Commanders select Deonte Banks, the corner out of Maryland. His stock has also certainly been on the rise. He's a really, really good player. Joey Porter Jr. is a good option for them as well, but I think they're really going to like Banks, and he would be a phenomenal fit and addition to their secondary. At 17, the Steelers get Joey Porter Jr., the corner out of Penn State. This was a really easy pick, a match made in heaven of team and player. The Steelers have a needed corner. Joey Porter Jr. is really good. The fit is good. Bang. Easy enough. Kalijah Kancey, the defensive lineman out of Pitt, goes to the Lions here at 18. I don't really know how I feel about this pick because I am a little bit concerned of Kancey's ability in the run game, but as a pass rusher, he's really, really good, and he's going to make an impact there right away. The Lions already have good run-defending defensive linemen like John Kaminsky and Isaiah Buggs, guys who don't really get talked about, who were pretty good last year and were signed to extensions in the offseason. Obviously, you got Aleem McNeil at the nose, and then every down guys like Aiden Hutchinson. He's obviously phenomenal. So I think getting another pass rusher would not be the worst idea. We saw what James Houston was able to do in pass rushing snaps last year as an edge rusher. Now, Houston was a 6th-round pick, so it's a little bit different here. But I do think Kalijah Kancey would be a good fit within the defense. Brad Holmes was in the building when the Rams drafted Aaron Donald, a player who profiles athletically pretty similar. Is Kalijah Kancey going to be the next Aaron Donald? No, he is not. But I think for the same reasons why the Rams like Donald, the Lions could look to draft Kancey here. Dalton Kincaid, the tight end of Utah, goes to the Raiders at 19. I would understand why Raiders fans who are going into the draft with the 7th pick might be disappointed if Dalton Kincaid is their highest picked player. However, Dalton Kincaid's really good. Special receiver, very good with the ball in his hands, decent enough blocker as well. Obviously, he's coming off the back injury, so there are some questions there. Darren Waller and Foster Moreau are gone. They did sign some placeholders at tight end with Austin Hooper and Irv Smith, but those guys, or not Irv Smith, the other Alabama guy, O.J. Howard. But that's not going to stop the Raiders from looking to improve the tight end position, and Dalton Kincaid here could be pretty good value. Broderick Jones, the offensive tackle out of Georgia, goes to the Patriots at 20. As I said with New England, there's a lot of good picks for them, so why not move down, add another 2, and you get Broderick Jones, who I think makes a lot of sense. We know Bill Belichick likes to invest in the offensive line. Bijan Robinson goes to the Chargers at 21. Bijan Robinson, such a fascinating player to me because in terms of pure talent, he might be the best player in the entire draft. But in a deep running back class, who knows where he's going to end up? Obviously, running back is a very polarizing position. I could see him going in the top 10. He's been linked to Atlanta. He's been linked to Philadelphia. I wouldn't rule out the Bears, although I don't think I would do that if I were them. D'Onta Foreman is a dog. But I think the Chargers here at 21 do make a lot of sense. And again, there's more teams in the teens who could look at him. I know a lot of people are saying New England. I don't like that. Ramondre Stevenson's really good. Detroit at 18 is a possibility. I know we signed David Montgomery, but I don't know if he stops you from picking a guy like Bijan. The Buccaneers at 19, I don't think that would happen. I think they like Rachaad White, but again, possible. So he falls all the way here to 21. And I get the Chargers have Austin Eckler, who's a good player. But it seems like Eckler doesn't really want to stick around in Los Angeles. So adding Bijan to that offense, man, that would be nasty. Zay Flowers, wide receiver out of Boston College to the Ravens. There's a few different options for the Ravens. I thought about pass rush. Myles Murphy could be a good pick. They could look in the secondary. Emmanuel Forbes and Tyreek Stevenson both work. They're going to add another weapon with Zay Flowers. And now all of a sudden, you have a very appealing receiving core to Lamar Jackson, who obviously you got to try to convince to come back. We've got another trade here at 23. It's not a real NFL draft without the New Orleans Saints moving up in the first round. So the Saints will be getting picks 23 and 158 from the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota, meanwhile, will get 29, 71, and 146. Minnesota does not have a lot of draft picks this year or next year, so they got to move down, collect some more capital. New Orleans jumps up and takes Myles Murphy, the pass rusher out of Clemson. I've had Murphy outside the first round before, and as I really think about it, I don't think that's going to happen. I think some team's going to fall in love with the physical upside of him and use a first-round selection on him. Here, the New Orleans Saints are going to move up and add him here to their defensive line. Cameron Jordan can be a really good mentor for him. Obviously, Marcus Davenport didn't entirely work out, but I think if developed, Myles Murphy certainly could. Brian Branch to the Jaguars, another really easy pick here at 24. They could use another playmaker in the secondary. If Brian Branch is available for the Jaguars, I think they would be hard-pressed not to pick him. I think the Giants' wide receiving core is a little bit better than people give it credit for. I think there are other options the Giants could look at. Maybe the interior offensive line, maybe linebacker, maybe safety. The problem is it's really a little bit too early for any of those spots. I wouldn't mind a guy like John Michael Schmitz or Jack Campbell here. I don't think those would be reaches, but I think I'm higher on those two players than the league is. So the Giants will add to the receiving core with Jordan Addison, a guy who's got the opportunity to be Daniel Jones's number one target, or maybe number two behind Darren Waller, very, very early on into his career. Obviously, the measurables are a little bit of a concern, but we've seen the production with him at Pitt and then USC, and obviously he is a great, great receiver. Michael Mayer, the tight end out of Notre Dame to the Dallas Cowboys. I saw a rumor yesterday that if Michael Mayer makes it to pick 26, Dallas is probably not going to pass on him, and I think it makes sense. Obviously, that could be smoke, but I buy it. Dallas has obviously been very stable at the tight end position over the last couple of decades, with Jason Witten specifically, and even Dalton Schultz over the last few years. He's been a pretty good player. They had him on the franchise tag last year, so at one point in time, they valued him highly. So I think they do want to address the tight end position sooner rather than later. They don't have to do it here in the first round, but if they really like Michael Mayer, obviously this is the spot to do it. Bryan Bresee, defensive lineman out of Clemson to the Bills. I don't know why. He just feels like a Bill. I can see it happening. I'm not a huge Bryan Bresee guy. I don't view him as a first-round player, but I understand the upside with him is really good, and I could see Buffalo wanting to take a shot on him. Adetomiwa Adebawore, defensive lineman out of Northwestern to the Bengals. I personally prefer a guy like Adebawore over Bryan Bresee. I think this would be a good pick for the Bengals. He obviously tested very well at the Combine. He's a little bit of a tweener, though. Do you put him inside? Do you put him at edge? He certainly has the explosiveness to play edge, and I think he's got the size to potentially play inside. So it's not a matter of not really being able to fit at either spots, but it's more so that I think he's versatile enough to play on a bunch of different spots on the Bengals defensive line. So I think this would be a nice pick for them. Minnesota at 29, they moved back 6 spots and they select Hendon Hooker, quarterback out of Tennessee. There's been a lot of buzz over the last couple of weeks that Hendon Hooker could be a late first, early second round guy. He's been heavily linked to the Minnesota Vikings. While I personally would not use a first round pick on Hendon Hooker, I get it for Minnesota. They've been treading with mediocrity over the last 5 years with Kirk Cousins at the position, and Kirk Cousins isn't a bad player. But I think they realized that if you want to be a serious contender in what is a weaker NFC, I don't think keeping Kirk Cousins around really is your best move. He's a guy who does not play well when the lights shine the brightest. Kirk Cousins is under contract for this year. You can still play him for this season, but you can try to groom Hendon Hooker behind him. There are some things to like about Hooker. Obviously, the accuracy is very good. The production a season ago was phenomenal before the injury, but there are some concerns with him. He's probably going to be 26 when he first plays. He's coming off an ACL, and he played in a very gimmicky college-styled offense. Will his skill set translate to the pros? I don't know. That's why I wouldn't use a first-round pick on him, but I could see a team like Minnesota really liking him. I don't think I've ever seen this selection before in a mock draft, but I really like it. It's Josh Downs, the wide receiver out of North Carolina, to the Eagles at pick 30. I think Josh Downs could be a first-round pick. I could see a similar rise with him that we saw last year with Jahan Dotson, a guy who a lot of people saw as a really good day 2 receiver, but ends up going in the first round. And I think Dotson proved himself as a first-round player last year with the Washington Commanders when he was healthy. The Eagles could use a true slot receiver. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith is a phenomenal duo. They are a top probably 3 wide receiver tandem in the NFL, but they could use a real slot guy. Quez Watkins is fine, but you can upgrade. Josh Downs is a much better player than he is, so that would be a nasty receiving trio, maybe the best in the league. I don't know if they're better than Cincinnati's trio, but probably second in terms of a big 3, and obviously Dallas Goedert's a great tight end as well. And their offensive line is loaded too. So Jalen Hurts is obviously in a great situation for himself to continue to be a great quarterback over these next few years with his new extension. And then rounding out the first round, the Chiefs go with Anton Harrison, the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. The Chiefs lost Orlando Brown. They could use some new faces on the offensive line. They did sign Jawan Taylor. He can play right and left tackle, I think. But they could use another guy on the opposite side of Jawan Taylor. And I think Anton Harrison could be a pretty solid pick for them. Into the second round now. We'll start with the Pittsburgh Steelers at 32, and they select DeJuan Jones, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. I could really see him going in the first round. This is just kind of how the board played out. He falls into the early second. Steelers aren't complaining, though. He's a good player. Tyreek Stevenson and Emmanuel Forbes. I'm going to talk about these two guys together because I think these are 2 more players who are going to go earlier than people expect. I've been mocking Tyreek Stevenson in the first round. I could really see that. And Emmanuel Forbes as well, I think, could absolutely sneak into the late first round. But again, with how the board plays out, they're going to go in the early second round. Stevenson is the Texans' pick at 33. He's a very polished player. I think can step right in opposite of Derek Stingley, and they could be a nice little duo. And then Emmanuel Forbes to the Cardinals at 34. I think he's a good fit. Great ball skills, great production. I understand the Cardinals already drafted a corner today. They picked Christian Gonzalez with their first round selection. You're probably thinking the Cardinals have so many needs. Why would they pick 2 corners? Well, the Cardinals have so many needs, they might as well focus on value. And I think Christian Gonzalez at 4 is not as big of a reach as people think. And Emmanuel Forbes here at 34 is great value. As I talked about with the Gonzalez pick, I think we saw the importance of having 2 great corners with Jonathan Gannon's defense, and now he's going to get 2 big-time corners. They've got some young guys in the secondary at corner like Marco Wilson and Rashad Fenton, but let's be real. Those 2 guys are not stopping you from adding Christian Gonzalez and Emmanuel Forbes to your defense. We've got another trade. It's the New Orleans Saints again, moving up to the 35th pick with Indianapolis. The Saints get 35 and a future 7, while the Colts get 40, 115, and a future 6. The player of the Saints are moving up for is Quentin Johnston, the wide receiver out of TCU. Big physical, well, maybe not physical, but he's a big guy. He plays small, though. He's got to be more consistent with his hands, but there is some things to like about him. He's good after the catch. And I think some team could fall in love with him in the first round. I think a sneaky spot for him is Buffalo. I think that's more likely than people think. But I do see him going in the second round. I think that the media is higher on him than the league is. So I've been saying this for a while. Quentin Johnston's going to go later than people think. And that's not me saying he's a bad player. I just don't think he's going to go as high as everybody's thinking he will. B.J. Ojulari to the Rams, the edge rusher out of LSU. This was an easy pick here. He's a good fit on their defense, good value. Enough said. Really good player. O'Cyrus Torrence, another easy pick here to the Seattle Seahawks. He's a great guard, very good in pass protection. I do want to see him a little bit better in the run game. He didn't grade as well there according to PFF, but he's a good player. Seattle does have a need at guard. Mazie Smith, the big defensive tackle out of Michigan, goes to the Raiders here at the 38th pick. He's a guy who could sneak into the first round. I wouldn't be that surprised, but he falls here to the early second. The Raiders are going to add him to a defensive line that, other than Max Crosby, really struggled last year. And then at 39, we've got another trade. The Green Bay Packers are moving up here with Carolina. The Packers will get 39 and 145, while Carolina gets 45, 116, and 149. The player Green Bay is moving up for is Darnell Washington, the tight end out of Georgia. I think he'd be a nice fit in this offense. Obviously a great blocker, very good athlete, so I think there is a lot of room for improvement as a receiver. And this just feels like a Packers pick, and I think it would be a good pick here in the early second. The Colts at 40 select Drew Sanders, the linebacker out of Arkansas. I think this is a little bit earlier than people expect, but I think teams are really going to like the upside with Drew Sanders, who is the slight favorite, according to most betting sites, to be the top linebacker off the board. The Colts are able to move down, add a few more assets, so they don't have to pick him at 35, but instead they added some additional picks from New Orleans, and they still get him here at 40. Will McDonald, the edge rusher out of Iowa State, to the Tennessee Titans. I think he can be a pretty good fit on their defense. He was misused at Iowa State, but I think the talent is certainly there. And if the Titans can untap that potential, he could be really good. Jack Campbell, linebacker out of Iowa to the Jets. I really like this pick for New York. I think Jack Campbell's a first-round player. I don't think people realize how good this guy is. He's polished, and he's going to be good right away, but he's also a freak athlete. In terms of his relative athletic score, which has been tracked since 1987, there have been well over 2,000 linebackers who have entered through the NFL draft process. Jack Campbell is the 6th highest RAS scorer at the linebacker position ever. So this guy's a freak athlete with his size, and people don't realize it. And along with that, again, he's polished. He's going to be good right off the bat. So this is a slam dunk pick for the Jets here at 42. And then the Jets are back up at 43, but they're going to get their quarterback. This is the Aaron Rodgers trade. I really think it's going to look something like 43 or 42. It doesn't really matter. In this mock draft, I just have it being pick 43. But one of those second rounders, along with a second rounder next year, that can be turned into a first rounder, a conditional pick, depending on how Aaron Rodgers does. So Green Bay is going to move on from Aaron Rodgers. They're going to get this pick. They're going to get a 2 that can become a 1 next year. And the Packers are going to draft Kelee Ringo, the corner out of Georgia. Maybe you try to slide him over to safety. He's a freak athlete who's got a lot of work to do. The Packers' first 3 picks today have all come from Georgia. Nolan Smith, Darnell Washington, and Kelee Ringo. I didn't do that on purpose, but it would be on brand for Brian Gutekunst, who's obviously drafted a lot of Georgia players recently. Eric Stokes, Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt. The Packers love their Georgia Bulldogs, and they're adding 3 of them here within the top 43 picks. We've got another trade here at 44. The Cleveland Browns are moving up with Atlanta. The Browns will be trading 44 and a future 6 to the Falcons for 74, 98, and 126. So the Falcons are adding 3 picks this year for the price of 1 and a future pick. The player the Browns are moving up for with their top 2 picks, along with another 4, is Keon White out of Georgia Tech. I don't think I would make this move if I was Cleveland. I think Keon White's got a lot of work to do, and he's an older prospect, but he is new to the position. He does have great size and athleticism, so I see why teams like him. Keon White was invited to the NFL draft. I don't want to read too much into that, but maybe the perception of him between the media and the league is differently, and maybe he does sneak into the first round just based on upside. It is certainly possible. At 45, Carolina moved down a little bit. They get Felix Nduke-Uzoma, the edge rusher out of Kansas State. He's the same guy I would have given them had they not traded down with Green Bay at 39, so works out for them. New England at 46 gets Clark Phillips, the corner out of Utah. Clark Phillips has met with every single team in the NFL, so clearly teams like him. He's a smart corner who must be a high-character guy if every team wants to see him. So because of that, he just feels like a New England Patriot in that sense, and I feel like he seems like a Bill Belichick type of player. At 47, the Commanders get John Michael Schmitz, the center out of Minnesota. I love Washington's draft here. Deonte Banks at 16, now John Michael Schmitz. I think teams are kind of going to overlook him. I think John Michael Schmitz is a first-round player and a guy who's going to be really good at the next level, but people just don't really see the athleticism. They don't know if he's going to play center or guard. But don't overthink it. This guy's a great offensive lineman. It's kind of like Creed Humphrey a couple years ago. He's going to slip later than he should. Teams are going to overthink it, and teams are going to regret it. Detroit is going to continue to add to the defense with Keanu Benton out of Wisconsin. I know I already gave them Kalijah Kancey, but the Lions are very clearly trying to build a monstrous defensive line. So why not add another guy to that group of Keanu Benton? And now you have Benton, Kancey, Hutchinson, McNeil, Kaminsky, Buggs. If he ever gets healthy, Levi Onwuzurike. You have James Houston as a sub-pass rusher. That is a loaded group. And Josh Paschal. How could I forget about him as well? So maybe the Lions don't pick this many defensive linemen. I mean, they picked 2 in the first 2 rounds last year. They picked 2 in the first 2 rounds the year before. But on the flip side, it's very clear that this is what the Lions are trying to do. Build an identity up front in the trenches. And this defensive line, if everybody can click together, is going to be scary. At pick 49, I've got a trade, and it's a weird one here. I don't think Dallas fans are going to like it, but hear me out. So it's pick 49 going to Dallas. The Steelers will get picks 58 and 90. So Dallas is going to be trading 2 picks this year for 1. The Cowboys are also going to get a future late-round pick as well. And they're moving up for Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back out of Alabama. And this is a weird pick because they already have Tony Pollard, who's a really, really good player. In the podcast episode I did last week with Nickinator, who's an Eagles fan for what it's worth, he ranked Tony Pollard as the 6th best running back in the league. While I think that's a little high, I agree that Tony Pollard is awesome. However, here's the thing. Tony Pollard's on the franchise tag. He's coming off a big injury in the playoffs. Dallas has learned their lesson about paying running backs. They paid Ezekiel Elliott, and they regret it. I don't think they're going to do the same thing with Tony Pollard, especially considering you have Dak making such huge money. You're paying your offensive linemen big money. Micah Parsons is going to need a contract extension in a couple years. He might ask for quarterback money. And then Trayvon Diggs also needs to be paid as well. Those guys are going to be priorities over Tony Pollard. And realistically, you can't keep Tony Pollard long term. Jahmyr Gibbs is a pretty similar player, so on one hand, it's like they have similar skill sets. How are they going to complement each other in year one? But I think having a guy with fresh legs like Jahmyr Gibbs isn't the worst thing in the world. And then, assuming Tony Pollard is gone next year, Jahmyr Gibbs can be the guy, and it'll be a seamless transition from Pollard to him. So again, I get it why Dallas fans are probably not going to love this idea. But in terms of value, Jahmyr Gibbs at 49 is a steal. You're not going to find better value in getting a new running back. I know it's a little bit uncharacteristic for a tight end and a running back to be the use of your day 1 and day 2 draft picks, but I could see Jerry getting a little bit desperate with the Cowboys being so close yet so far over the last, really, 25 years. Cam Smith to the Raiders here at pick 50. They got this pick from the Bucs. He's a good player, and the Raiders need good players on their defense. Enough said. Matthew Bergeron, the offensive tackle out of Syracuse to the Dolphins. This is a really easy pick. After Bergeron, there's a major drop-off in terms of offensive tackles, in my opinion. So pick him and yeah, I think it'd be a nice selection for them. Carl Brooks, the versatile defensive lineman out of Bowling Green State, to the Patriots. This might seem a little bit early, but New England's not afraid to reach on guys they like. It's kind of a detriment to them, but they're not afraid to do it. And I think Carl Brooks can be a good player with his versatility at the next level. He kind of feels like a New England Patriot. Joe Tippmann, the center out of Wisconsin, the Chicago Bears. Their first pick was Paris Johnson, so they're continuing to improve the offensive line. Justin Fields is no excuse. He's got to produce here in year 3, and I think he's certainly good enough to do so. Sidney Brown, the safety out of Illinois, to the Chargers at 54. I thought about going with another offensive skill position player at the wide receiver position, but I think the Chargers are going to look to go defense here. I also thought about the other Illinois defensive back, Jartavis Martin. I think he'd be a good pick here, but they're going to go with Sidney Brown, a guy who I know a lot of people like, could end up going higher than people think. And then Cedric Tillman of the Lions here at 55. The wide receiver position's kind of a sneaky need for Detroit. You've got your deep threat in Jamison Williams. You've got your slot guy in Amon-Ra St. Brown. But I think they're going to look for that big physical target earlier rather than later in this draft. They have Josh Reynolds, who's fine. They signed Marvin Jones, who's cool, but older. So I could see them investing a top 100 pick at the receiver position. And I think Cedric Tillman from Tennessee is a really, really good player. I think he's the better prospect of the 2 Tennessee receivers. And I think this would be a solid pick here for Detroit at 55. The Jaguars have met with a lot of edge rushers through the pre-draft process, so clearly that's a spot they're looking to improve upon. And they're going to go with Tuli Tuipulotu, a guy who I think can contribute right away. This is another versatile player who you can try to figure out if he's going to play long-term on the edge or more within the interior, but he's a good player. Dion Henley, linebacker out of Washington State, to the Giants. I've had him go higher than this, but a lot of the betting sites seem very high with Drew Sanders and Jack Campbell's stock compared to him. Maybe he goes earlier than 57, but again, this is just kind of how the board played out, but the Giants aren't going to complain. He'd be a great pick for them here. Trenton Simpson to the Steelers here at 58. Devin Bush didn't really work out. I could see the Steelers trying it again with another toolsy athletic linebacker here with Simpson, who they hope to develop. Jartavis Martin, defensive back out of Illinois, to the Buffalo Bills. You're getting a versatile defensive back here with Martin who can do a lot of different things. I think he'd be a fun fit with the Bills defense. Tyjae Spears, running back out of Tulane, to the Bengals. I think I had this same pick in my last mock draft. Who knows what's going to happen with Joe Mixon? And even if Joe Mixon is not suspended and he does play, A, the Bengals need another running back because Joe Mixon can't do it alone. And B, Joe Mixon's getting older, and I think he is starting to show some signs of age. So they need a long-term running back, and they might need a running back right away. And Tyjae Spears, I think, is a really, really underrated prospect who hasn't been talked about enough, but he's good. At 61, we've got a trade. The Falcons are moving back up. So they originally had a mid-second rounder. They traded it to Cleveland, and they got a lot of picks back. And they're going to move back up here with Chicago, swapping 61 and 74. And then the Bears will also get pick 113 as well. The player I had the Falcons moving up for is Jalen Hyatt, the wide receiver out of Tennessee. I think they could use that explosiveness at the wide receiver position. They've got 2 big dynamic targets with Drake London and Kyle Pitts, but why not add a speedster? You can slide right into the slot. That is a big need for them, and Jalen Hyatt could really open up the vertical passing game for the offense. Zach Charbonnet, running back out of UCLA, to the Eagles. They signed Rashad Penny, who's a good player, but he can't really stay healthy. Zach Charbonnet's a good running back. He's been very solid for UCLA the last couple of years. He can be an early down runner and potentially groomed to be a good receiver. And then Gervon Dexter to the Chiefs here at 63, a high upside defensive lineman. Kansas City lost some guys in the middle, Colin Saunders, Frank Clark. Get a guy who can eventually pair next to Chris Jones in the long term. This is earlier than I've really ever seen Dexter go, but I think some team might like the upside enough to take a swing here in the second round. At pick 64, the Bears get DJ Turner, the corner out of Michigan, to start the third round. Turner obviously had the fastest 40 time of any player at the Combine, and I think he's a good prospect. Could certainly go in the second round, but this is just how the board played out. Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver out of Ole Miss, to the Texans. He's a good player. I think people are really starting to come on to him being a day 2 pick. Maybe he goes in the second round, maybe he goes in the third. I don't really have a great gauge of where his stock is, but I think early third is reasonable. The Texans could use another pass catcher. Tanks Bigsby, running back out of Auburn, to the Cardinals. He could be an early down physical runner for them. I think he's another guy who's kind of gone under the radar throughout the draft process, but could be a top 100 pick. Devin Achane to the Broncos at 67. This is interesting. I like this fit. I'm not a huge fan of Achane as a prospect, but put him with Sean Payton. He's going to find creative ways to get Achane involved. So As I was making the mock draft, this was one of my favorite picks of the entire video. Jaquelin Roy, defensive lineman out of LSU to the Broncos. Once upon a time, he was looked at as a potential top 15 pick, but I think teams have realized that maybe the long-term upside with him is not worth picking in the first round, but on day 2, I think it makes sense. Denver here at 68 certainly works. The Rams at pick 69, nice, select Steve Avila, the guard out of TCU. I don't think I've ever seen Avila go this late, but again, this is just kind of how the board played out, and the Rams get lucky because of it. Luke Whippler, center out of Ohio State, to the Raiders at pick 70. The Raiders' interior offensive line is not good. They did draft Dylan Parham, the guard out of Memphis last year. I do like him, but other than that, it's not great. And then at 71, the Seattle Seahawks are moving up here with Minnesota. The Vikings are trading back again. The Vikings will be giving up picks 71 and a future 7th, while Seattle gets 83 and 151. I flip-flopped that. Minnesota's getting 83 and 151, while Seattle gets this pick and a future 7. So Seattle's going to pick Julius Brents, the corner out of Kansas State. The fit is too perfect. He is a Seattle Seahawk corner with his size and length. Maybe he goes earlier than this, but again, this is how the board played out. It works out for Seattle. He's a perfect Seattle corner. He's literally everything they look for. I think Marvin Mims, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma, is one of the most underrated players in the entire draft class. He's good, and I think he would be a really good addition to the Titans receiving core at 72. I wouldn't put it past him to be the best receiver on the roster at some point this season. I don't think that's unreasonable to expect. Chandler Zavala, guard out of NC State, to the Texans at 73, continuing to improve the offensive line, get some guys to block for your new quarterback, Will Levis. The Bears at 74 go with Colby Wooden, the edge rusher out of Auburn, a little bit raw, but a guy who could be pretty good down the line. Garrett Williams, corner out of Syracuse, to the Falcons. I really like this pick. Garrett Williams is coming off an ACL injury, so he doesn't have to play right away because the Falcons have a lot of guys at corner, but they don't have a lot of guys on long-term deals. I assume they're going to try to hammer out an extension with A.J. Terrell sooner rather than later, but assuming they do, they're still going to need another guy long-term. They did just trade for Jeff Okudah. Maybe he figures it out in Atlanta. I'm rooting for the guy, but I don't know if it's going to happen. They have Casey Hayward, who's a good player, but he's older. So Garrett Williams can sit behind those guys this year and maybe be the starter opposite of A.J. Terrell next year. Tank Dell to New England at 76, the wide receiver, or really gadget playmaker out of Houston. Put this guy on Bill Belichick's offense and let him and the coordinators have some fun. Why not? Luke Musgrave, tight end out of Oregon State, to the Jaguars in a trade-up. So this is with the Rams. The Jaguars will be trading away 88 and 121. The Rams will be trading away 77 and 171. So Jacksonville's moving up for Luke Musgrave. This has been a team and player pairing I've had for a while. I've had these guys picking Musgrave as high as the first round before. I think I got a little carried away with the hype there, but I think here in the third round, this is a great value selection for Jacksonville. Michael Wilson, wide receiver out of Stanford, to the Packers. He's a good player. Was phenomenal at the Senior Bowl. There are some medical concerns with him, but if healthy, he's good. And then Nick Herbig to the Cardinals here at 79. Jonathan Gannon's going to try to get his Hassan Reddick. I really like a Nolan Smith fit with the Cardinals. If they move back to like the back end of the top 10, I think he'd be a phenomenal pick for them. Obviously, that didn't happen here. But Nick Herbig kind of is a good fit as well. A guy who can play off the ball and a developmental pass rusher. I'm not saying he's going to be Hassan Reddick, but he can be used in that role for Jonathan Gannon's defense. Blake Freeland, the tackle out of BYU, to the Steelers. I know they picked a tackle earlier, but they could really use two. Blake Freeland's a high-upside athletic player who needs some developing. He's probably not going to play right away, especially with drafting DeJuan Jones earlier. But this is a guy who could be quite good down the line. Sam Laporta, tight end out of Iowa, to the Lions. I could see Laporta going a lot earlier than this, maybe in the second round. But the tight ends kind of fell here, and Detroit will take advantage, as did the Jaguars with Luke Musgrave just a couple picks ago. Wanya Morris, tackle out of Oklahoma, to the Buccaneers. They need another tackle along with Tristan Wirfs, and Wanya Morris is a pretty solid player. Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, corner out of TCU, to the Vikings, the Jim Thorpe Award winner. He's obviously a smaller guy, but he is certainly talented. Luke Schoonmaker, tight end out of Michigan, to the Dolphins. They need a tight end. Mike Gesicki is gone, and Schoonmaker's a good player. Jaden Reed, wide receiver out of Michigan State, to the Chargers here at 85. He can slide into the slot and maybe have Keenan Allen play more outside, or you could have Jaden Reed try to play outside as well. They also have Joshua Palmer too. So they've got a number of guys who can do different things in that receiving core and eventually groom Jaden Reed to be the long-term probably slot guy. Israel Abanikanda, running back out of Pitt, to the Baltimore Ravens. I know it's a little uncharacteristic for the Ravens to use all of their top 100 picks on offensive skill position players, but the Ravens are kind of in dire times. I really like Abanikanda. He's a little bit raw, but this is a guy who could be really good. He's only 20 years old. He's one of the youngest players in the entire draft. J.K. Dobbins has 1 year left on his deal. He hasn't really been able to stay healthy. So Abanikanda can develop this year and be the starting running back next year. Tyler Scott, wide receiver out of Cincinnati to the Vikings, is a pretty talented player. Can play inside, can play out. Minnesota needs some more receivers. Justin Jefferson's great, but he's not enough. KJ Osborne's solid, but other than that, there's not a whole lot behind those guys. The Rams at 88 select Sean Tucker, running back out of Syracuse. I'm a big Sean Tucker fan. I'm pleased to see him off the board within the top 100 picks. He doesn't have a ton of upside as a receiver, but he's a big, physical, explosive back. He was not healthy enough to participate in the combine, but he will be participating in a pro day just a few days before the draft, which is interesting. I think the Rams could use another running back along with Cam Akers, and Cam Akers is a free agent at the end of the year, so maybe Sean Tucker can be your long-term guy. Jordan Battle, defensive back out of Alabama to the New York Giants, 4-year starter for the Nick Saban defense. This is a guy who's going to be good right away and be able to produce. A.T. Perry, the big physical wide receiver out of Wake Forest to the Steelers. They did a trade for Allen Robinson today. I made this mock draft before the trade, but I still think this makes sense. I don't think Allen Robinson changes their plans. They didn't give up anything for him. It was a swap of sevens. Allen Robinson's cooked as well. He's been washed for the last 2 years. So realistically, Allen Robinson changes nothing for them. A.T. Perry can be what you kind of hope Chase Claypool was going to be. He's 6'5". He's really athletic for his size. I think him, Deonthe Johnson, George Pickens, that's a nice long-term trio. Calvin Austin as well, the dynamic gadget playmaker. Dwayne McBride, running back out of UAB to the Bills. I've been very against the Bills picking a running back, but I think of the running backs here, Dwayne McBride does make a lot of sense for them. They have James Cook, who's a good player. I really liked him coming out of Georgia last year, and he really improved throughout the season. But I think they could use an early down physical runner to pair with him, and that's Dwayne McBride. Tucker Kraft to the Bengals here at 92, solid player. They lost Hayden Hurst. They did sign Irv Smith, who's had a hard time staying healthy throughout his career. I think Tucker Kraft, could end up being the long-term guy there. DeMarvion Overshown, linebacker out of Texas to the Panthers. I think he fits pretty well under their defense. Overshown was dreadful in 2021, but he was a lot better last year. He was able to get that draft stock back. Carter Warren, tackle out of Pitt to the Eagles. A lot of tackles on the board here. It's kind of the question of if they're going to be a tackle in the long term, like Cody Mock, Nick Saldaderi, Tyler Steen. Guys who I thought about here. That's not the case with Carter Warren. With his size and arm length, he probably does project out to be a tackle. Now, the Eagles are good at tackle for a while with Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, but we know Philadelphia likes to draft before they need certain positions, especially within the trenches. And then Zach Kuntz, the tight end of Old Dominion, to the Kansas City Chiefs at 95. I get that Travis Kelce's awesome, but look, Travis Kelce's 34 years old, and Zach Kuntz is a freak. Amongst tight ends, since the relative athletic score has been tracked in 1987, Zach Kuntz is the most athletic tight end to enter the league in that span. So he is a literal freak show, and the production's not half bad. If you can groom him behind Travis Kelce for a few years, who knows how good he can end up being. Final few picks of the day. We start with the Cardinals at 96. They pick Andrew Voorhees, the guard out of USC. He did tear his ACL during his combine workout, but realistically, the Cardinals aren't going to win a whole lot in 2023. They're trying to draft for the future, and Voorhees can be a starter in 2024 and beyond. Olusegun Oluwatimi, the center out of Michigan, to the Commanders at 97. This feels like a weird pick because they drafted John Michael Schmitz in the second round, but Schmitz has guard center flexibility. I think Oluwatimi possibly does as well, and Washington needs both center and guard, so you're really improving the middle of that offensive line. Derek Hall, the edge rusher out of Auburn, to the Atlanta Falcons here at pick 98. Talented player. They did draft Tyree Wilson earlier, but I think they could use some more guys along the edge. Their interior is pretty nice, though, with Grady Jarrett and Calais Campbell. Cody Mock out of North Dakota State to the Niners here at 99. He certainly could go earlier than this, but it's just kind of how the board played out. The Niners will capitalize, though. Tanner McKee, quarterback out of Stanford, to the Raiders here at pick 100. I could see the Raiders taking a shot on a quarterback. They did sign Jimmy Garoppolo, but is he the long-term guy? I don't know. Probably not. Rashee Rice to the Niners here at 101, the big physical receiver out of SMU. Get another guy who can be a playmaker at the wide receiver position. And then Yaya Diaby, the edge rusher out of Louisville, a talented developmental guy who they can look to redshirt early on, but turn him into a good player down the line. So that's going to do it here for my NFL Mock Draft 6.0. Let me know what you thought down below in the comments section. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Plenty more draft content coming here within the next week and a half as we eventually get to the 2023 NFL Draft. Peace out.